My son gave me an ultimatum. Yaz, either you hand over the house to us, or you won't see your grandchildren. His eyes gleamed with greed, and I, seemingly a broken old man, just smiled and made one phone call. He had no idea that this simple action would expose his betrayal and restore justice. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. Francis walked through my house like he was appraising real estate. His finger traced the mahogany banister as he climbed 3 steps, then came back down. He moved to the living room, running his palm along the mantelpiece. "This place is bigger than I remembered, Dad." His voice carried that calculating tone I'd learned to recognize. Lot of wasted space for one person. I gripped my coffee mug tighter. The china clinked against my wedding ring. "I wasn't expecting an appraisal, son." Clara peeked around the corner, her small face uncertain. Stanley clung to Ethel's coat, sensing the tension that had settled over my dining room like morning fog. The table sat ready with Margaret's good plates, the ones we'd saved for special occasions. Roast beef growing cold, mashed potatoes forming a skin. Francis opened my hall closet, measured the ceiling height with his eyes. "Dad, we can't keep living in that cramped apartment. The kids need space." "Then move in here." I gestured toward the empty bedrooms upstairs. "There's plenty of room." "No, Dad." Francis crossed his arms, positioning himself in the center of my living room. "We need our own space, our own place." He took a breath, and I saw Ethel nod slightly from behind him. "Either you transfer this house to us, or you won't see your grandchildren again." The words hit like winter air through an open door. I set my mug down carefully on the coffee table, buying time to process what I'd just heard. Stanley started crying, though he probably didn't understand why. Clara disappeared completely behind the doorframe. "Francis, think about what you're saying." "I've thought plenty." Ethel stepped forward, gathering Stanley's scattered toys from the floor with theatrical urgency. "Alfred, you're all alone here. We have children to raise. It's only fair." Fair. The word tasted bitter. I looked at the family photos lined up on the mantelpiece. Marvin's graduation picture smiled back at me. Francis's wedding photo, where I'd proudly walked Ethel down the aisle after her own father refused to come. Clara's first steps, taken right here in this living room. "You're talking about stealing my home." My voice stayed level. "And holding my grandchildren hostage." Francis's jaw tightened. "I'm talking about family helping family, about doing what's right." "Since when is extortion right?" "Don't be dramatic, Dad." Ethel pulled Clara's coat from the closet, the same closet Francis had been examining moments before. "We're not stealing anything. We're asking you to help your son." Through the window, I watched October darkness creep across my neighborhood. Mrs. Henderson's porch light flickered on. Normal people living normal lives, while my world tilted sideways. The untouched dinner mocked us from the dining room. "I helped you buy that apartment 5 years ago," I said quietly. "Gave you the last 30,000 I had saved. And we're grateful." Francis's tone suggested he was anything but. "But times change. Our needs have grown." Stanley wiped his nose on his sleeve, still confused by the adult tension swirling around him. Clara finally emerged, but only to grab her grandfather's hand. Her small fingers were warm against my palm. "Grandpa's house is nice," she whispered. "It could be your house too, sweetheart." Ethel's voice carried false sweetness. "Wouldn't that be wonderful?" I studied my son's face. When had those lines appeared around his eyes? When had his smile become so calculated? He looked nothing like Marvin, though they'd shared the same father. Different mothers, different choices, different men entirely. "You have 48 hours to decide, Dad." Francis zipped his jacket with finality. "Think about what matters most, this old house, or your family." "You are my family." "Then prove it." Ethel bundled the children toward the door. Stanley reached back for me, his small hand grasping air. Clara looked over her shoulder with worried eyes that reminded me painfully of Margaret. The front door opened, letting in cold air and the sound of their car engine running in my driveway. 48 hours, Francis repeated. Then they were gone. Car doors slammed. Engine noise faded down Maple Street. I stood in my dining room, still holding that coffee mug, listening to the silence settle back into my house like dust. The coffee had gone cold in my hands. I finally moved from the dining room, carrying the mug through rooms that suddenly felt cavernous. Each step echoed differently now that Francis's words hung in the air. In the living room, I touched Marvin's photograph. 28 years old forever, graduating summa cum laude from Northwestern. He'd driven straight to my house after the ceremony, still wearing his cap and gown, grinning like he'd conquered the world. "Dad, we did it," he'd said, though he'd earned every grade himself. Francis's wedding photo sat beside it. Smaller frame, less prominent placement. I remembered that day too. How he'd asked me to pay for the reception because Ethel's family wasn't contributing their fair share. How I'd written another check, depleting Margaret's medical fund to give them their perfect day. The house creaked around me. Familiar sounds I'd lived with for your 37 years, but tonight they felt different. Accusatory. "Wasted space," Francis had said. I walked through that wasted space, remembering when every room buzzed with life. My home office still held Marvin's drafting table. He'd left it here when he moved to California, promising to come back for it someday. The surface was covered with my own papers now, bank statements, mortgage documents, insurance policies. I opened the filing cabinet, looking for something I hoped I wouldn't find. There it was, the apartment purchase agreement from 5 years ago. Francis's signature bold and confident next to mine. The promissory note we'd drawn up, where he'd agreed to pay me back when he got on his feet. Below that, every monthly statement since then. 0 payments received. I climbed the stairs to what used to be Marvin's room. Still painted blue, still holding his desk and the bookshelves he'd built himself one weekend when he was 17. "Dad, don't hire anybody," he'd insisted. "I can do better work for free." And he had. Those shelves were still perfectly level, still holding his engineering textbooks. Francis's old room had become Margaret's craft space, then my storage area after she passed. Boxes of Christmas decorations and tax returns. No childhood memories preserved. No loving touches maintained. Had I somehow failed him by not being sentimental about his past? Back downstairs, I sat in Marvin's chair. He'd insisted I keep it after he moved D, a massive leather recliner that fit my frame perfectly. "You need something comfortable to read in, Dad." The last thing he'd given me before that drunk driver took him away 6 months later. When Marvin needed help, he'd never asked for money. He'd asked for time. "Dad, can you help me install this light fixture? Dad, want to help me change my oil? Dad, can you teach me how to fix that leak?" He'd wanted to learn, to become capable, to take care of himself. Francis only asked for cash, the apartment down payment, wedding costs, Clara's medical bills when she broke her arm, Stanley's preschool tuition. Each request accompanied by promises to pay back as soon as things turned around. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through 5 years of texts. Francis asking for money, 47 messages. Francis offering to help me, 0. The silence in my house felt heavy. Margaret's reading chair sat empty in the corner, her bookmark still marking page 247 of a mystery she'd never finish. I'd grown used to the quiet, found peace in solitude. But tonight, silence felt like a preview of the isolation Francis was threatening. 10 o'clock. In the kitchen, I rinsed my coffee mug and set it in the sink. Tomorrow would bring more pressure, more demands. Francis would expect an answer soon. He'd given me 48 hours, as if that was generous, as if stealing someone's home required a grace period. I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, moving slowly but with purpose. At the nightstand, I set my alarm for 7 a.m. Saturday morning would bring clarity. I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. My son had declared war using my grandchildren as weapons. Time to see how committed he was to this battle. The alarm cut through Saturday morning, quiet at exactly 7. I'd slept better than expected, considering the circumstances. Perhaps certainty brought its own peace, even when that certainty was unpleasant. I dressed carefully, khakis, button-down shirt. The clothes of a man who had plans. Coffee tasted the same in yesterday's mug. Normal routines in an abnormal situation. Outside my kitchen window, Mrs. Henderson worked in her garden, deadheading roses before the first frost. Life continued while my family fractured. I dialed Francis's number while buttering toast, straight to voicemail, as expected. "Francis, let's talk about this like adults. There has to be a middle ground." 5 minutes later, I tried again. This time, an automated message. "The number you have dialed is not available from your calling area. Blocked. Already." I tried calling Clara directly. Same message. Stanley's emergency phone D-blocked. Even Ethel's cell phone rejected my calls. In less than 12 hours, they'd systematically cut every connection between me and those children. Methodical, planned. This wasn't impulse or anger. This was strategy. Saturday afternoon, I drove past their apartment complex on Birch Street. Francis's Honda sat in space 47B, right where it always parked. Toys scattered across their small balconies suggested normal family life continuing inside. Through the sliding door, I glimpsed Ethel folding laundry while cartoons played on the television. No sign of the children. Sunday morning brought desperate measures. I called Ethel's sister in Wisconsin, hoping family loyalty might crack their united front. "I'm sorry, Alfred," Jennifer said carefully. "Ethel asked me not to get involved in family disputes." Asked or threatened. By Sunday afternoon, I was parked across from Roosevelt Elementary, watching families arrive for the weekend sports activities. Other grandfathers pushed strollers, held small hands, bought ice cream from the vendor near the playground. I waited 2 hours without seeing Clara or Stanley. Were they keeping the children inside, using them as prisoners in their own campaign? At 4 o'clock, I approached the school secretary's window. "I'm just checking if my grandchildren are okay. Clara and Stanley Watkins?" The gray-haired woman consulted her computer screen with professional courtesy. "I'm sorry, sir, but you're not on their authorized contact list. I can't provide any information about students." "I'm their grandfather. I understand, but policies require proper authorization. Perhaps you could speak with their parents about being added to the list." If only it were that simple. Sunday evening found me back in my study, surrounded by 5 years of financial records. Every check written to Francis's family, every promise broken, every emergency that required my immediate assistance. The pattern was clear once I laid it out chronologically. Francis had been preparing for this moment longer than I'd realized. My phone sat silent on the desk. No missed calls, no text messages, no indication that my 48 hours mattered to anyone but me. The deadline was tomorrow at 7:30 if Francis intended to honor his own timeline. I pulled out the photo album Margaret had made for the children, Clara's first tooth, Stanley's Christmas concert, birthday parties in this very house. Memories they'd lose if Francis carried through with his threat. Memories he was using as leverage, but leverage worked both ways. I reached for my phone, scrolling through contacts until I found the right number. Monday morning would bring phone calls and appointments. Francis had given me 48 hours to decide, as if he held all the cards. Time to see what cards I still had left to play. My hand had been resting on the phone all night. When I woke Monday morning, still slumped in my study chair, the business card lay beneath my fingers. Bernard Olson, attorney at law. I'd found it in my desk drawer Sunday evening, yellowed with age but still legible. Fresh coffee first. The ritual steadied my nerves as I dialed the familiar number. Bernard had handled Margaret's will, the house deed, every important document in my adult life. If anyone could help me protect my grandchildren's inheritance, it was him. Bernard Olson speaking. "Bernard, it's Alfred Watkins. I need to schedule an appointment to revise my will." A pause. Professional, but longer than necessary. "Alfred, good to hear from you. But I need to tell you something first. Your son's attorney contacted me last week." The coffee mug froze halfway to my lips. "What are you talking about?" "They're preparing a guardianship petition. They claim you have early-stage dementia." The words hit like a physical blow. I set the mug down hard, coffee sloshing across my desk. "Dementia? Bernard, I'm perfectly fine." "I know that, Alfred, but they have medical evaluations from 2 doctors. The documents look legitimate official seals, signatures, the whole package." My hand gripped the phone tighter. "How is this possible? What kind of documentation?" "Cognitive assessments, memory tests, behavioral observations. According to these reports, you've been experiencing confusion, memory lapses, difficulty managing finances." Bernard's voice carried the weight of bad news delivered professionally. "Alfred, if they file this petition, you could lose control of all your assets within weeks." I stood abruptly, the chair rolling backward. My mind raced through the implications. How much time do I have? Maybe a week, possibly 2 before they submit to the court. Once filed, there's an emergency hearing process. If the judge believes you're incapacitated, they can appoint Francis as your guardian immediately. And then Francis controls everything. Your house, your bank accounts, your medical decisions, everything. The morning sunlight streaming through my study window seemed to dim. Photos of my grandchildren smiled from the desk, unaware their futures hung in the balance. Bernard, you've known me for 20 years. Do I seem confused to you? Not for a second. That's why I'm telling you this. Something isn't right about those medical reports. What do you mean? The dates, Alfred. Both evaluations were supposedly conducted last month, but I never heard anything about you seeing specialists. When did you have these cognitive tests done? I didn't. The answer came flat and certain. I haven't seen any doctors except my regular physician for my annual checkup. That's what I thought. Bernard's voice sharpened. Alfred, I think your son may have fabricated those documents. The grandfather clock ticked loudly in the silence that followed. Fabricated. My own son had forged medical records to steal my life away. The Francis who'd once built blanket forts in my living room had grown into someone capable of this level of deception. What can I do? Get your own medical evaluation immediately. See a neurologist, get comprehensive cognitive testing. Create a paper trail showing your mental competency. Bernard paused. And Alfred, don't let Francis know you're aware of this. Not yet. Why not? Because if he knows you're fighting back, he might accelerate his timeline. File the petition this week instead of next. I nodded, though Bernard couldn't see me. The engineer in my mind was already calculating angles, variables, solutions. I understand. Alfred, there's one more thing. They're moving fast because they want to file before you can change your will or transfer assets. This whole thing is about your house, isn't it? Among other things. Then be very careful. And call me after you get that medical evaluation. After hanging up, I walked to my study window and looked out at the neighborhood where Francis had grown up. Mrs. Henderson was pruning her roses again, the same careful attention to detail she'd shown for 30 years. Normal life continuing while my world shifted beneath my feet. In the glass reflection, I saw my own face staring back, still sharp-eyed, still alert. Whatever Francis was planning, he'd underestimated his target. The phone felt heavier in my hand as I reached for it again. The reflection in my window showed an old man under attack, but it also showed something Francis had forgotten. D, the intelligence that had built a career solving complex engineering problems. Now I had a new problem to solve. I turned from the window and walked to my desk, pulling out a fresh notepad. At the top, I wrote, Timeline. Beneath it, I began listing everything Bernard had told me. Medical documents dated last month, 2 doctors I'd never met, guardianship petition ready to file, emergency hearings within days of filing, Francis holding all the cards D, or thinking he did. My coffee had gone cold while talking to Bernard. I dumped it in the kitchen sink and made a fresh pot, my mind working through variables like the old days. Every engineering problem had multiple solutions. You just had to see them. Back in my study, I opened my laptop and searched for early dementia symptoms. Memory loss, confusion, difficulty with familiar tasks, poor judgment, changes in mood and personality. I read carefully, taking notes. If Francis wanted to play games with my mental capacity, I needed to understand the rules. The bathroom mirror made a perfect practice stage. I stood there, looking at my reflection, and tried slowing my speech slightly. Where did I put my glasses? I asked the mirror, adding a note of confusion. I just had them a moment ago. Too obvious. I tried again, more subtle. Now, where was I going with this? Better. The key was suggestion, not performance. My phone buzzed. Text message from Francis. Dad, thinking about our conversation Friday. Hope you're doing well. Call me when you're ready to talk. Ready to talk. As if I were the one being unreasonable. I set the phone aside without responding. Francis could wait while I prepared. In my filing cabinet, I found the documents that mattered most. Original deed to the house, bank statements, insurance policies, Margaret's jewelry appraisal. I gathered them into a folder and carried them upstairs to the bedroom safe Margaret had insisted we install. Francis knew about the safe, but he didn't know the combination. Downstairs again, I left decoy documents where Francis might look. Old tax returns, expired insurance policies, outdated bank statements showing smaller account balances. Let him think he knew everything. 1 o'clock. I made a sandwich but barely tasted it. My mind was elsewhere, planning moves and countermoves. Francis had given me 48 hours to surrender, time to give him an answer he wasn't expecting. I pulled out Marvin's photo from the mantelpiece and studied his face. At 28, he had already shown more integrity than Francis had at 42. "Your brother thinks he's clever," I said quietly to the picture. "Time to show him what clever really looks like." The plan was forming, simple, elegant, like the best engineering solutions. Francis wanted to play the concerned son protecting his confused father. Fine, let him have his role. But every good performance needed an audience. At 2:30, I sat in Marvin's old chair and closed my eyes, thinking through every detail. The timing had to be perfect. Too eager, and Francis would suspect. Too reluctant, and he might accelerate his guardianship plans. I needed to seem defeated, but not broken. Confused, but not incompetent. Grateful for his help, but unaware of his true motives. My watch showed 2:45. Time to make the call that would set everything in motion. I picked up the phone and dialed Francis's number, my finger hovering over the final digit. In a few moments, my son would think he'd won. Let him believe it. The best traps were the ones your prey walked into willingly. I pressed the last number and listened to the phone begin to ring. "Hello, Dad." Francis answered on the second ring, his voice carefully controlled but expectant. I took a measured breath, letting just a hint of weariness color my tone. "Francis, I've been thinking about what you said, about the house, about the children." A pause, then, more gently, "I'm glad you called, Dad. What are you thinking? Maybe you're right. I am getting older, and this place is too big for me." I let the words come slowly, as if each one cost me something. All these empty rooms, all the maintenance. "Dad, I knew you'd come around." The relief in Francis's voice was immediate and genuine. "You're making the right decision for everyone. For yourself, for us, for the kids. I just want what's best for the family." I moved to my study window, looking out at the yard where Francis had played as a child. "I suppose I've been selfish, holding on to memories." "You're not selfish, Dad. You're just dealing with a lot right now. We just want what's best for you. The apartment will be perfect for someone your age, D. Everything on one level, no yard work, closer to medical facilities." Medical facilities. The irony wasn't lost on me. "How long will it take to arrange everything? I'll need time to pack, to sort through things." "Actually, Dad, I already spoke to a lawyer. We can handle everything efficiently. 2 weeks should be plenty of time for the paperwork." Francis's voice carried the confidence of someone whose plan was working perfectly. "Maybe the kids can come say goodbye to the house this weekend?" "Yes." I let genuine emotion enter my voice. "The children should see the house one more time, where their grandfather lived." I paused, adding carefully, "I want them to remember me, before I forget too much." "Don't worry about that, Dad. We'll take good care of you. You'll be closer to doctors, closer to help when you need it. Help when I need it. How thoughtful of my son to arrange medical care for problems I didn't have. You've thought of everything, haven't you? I've been worried about you for a while, Dad. Living alone in that big house, managing all those finances, it's a lot for anyone, especially as we get older. I suppose it has been getting more difficult." I let uncertainty creep into my voice. "Sometimes I find myself in a room and can't remember why I went there. That's perfectly normal, Dad. Happens to everyone. But you'll have support now. We'll handle all the complicated stuff. D-bills, maintenance, legal matters. You can just focus on enjoying time with your grandchildren. And you're sure about the lawyer? He can handle the transfer properly?" "Absolutely. Lloyd Carroll D. He specializes in these kinds of family arrangements. Very efficient, very discreet. He'll make sure everything is done right." Lloyd Carroll. I made a mental note of the name. Francis's confidence was revealing more than he realized. "Should I call a real estate agent, or do you have someone in mind?" "Let's let Lloyd handle that too, Dad. He has connections. We want to make this as easy as possible for you." Easy. Yes, stealing someone's home should be effortless. "Thank you, son. I know this isn't easy for you either, having to take care of your old father like this." "Hey, that's what family does, right? We take care of each other." I almost laughed at the twisted logic. Francis taking care of me by stealing everything I owned. "When will I meet this lawyer?" "How about next Monday? That gives you a week to get used to the idea. Maybe start packing some personal items." Lloyd can explain everything then. Next Monday. I pulled out a pen and wrote the date on my notepad, though I had no intention of meeting Francis's crooked lawyer. Will you and Ethel be there? Of course. And Dad, thank you for making this decision. It couldn't have been easy. No, I agreed quietly. It wasn't easy at all. After hanging up, I sat in my study chair for a long moment, staring at the phone. Francis thought he'd won. In his mind, the house was already his. The guardianship papers were insurance, and his confused old father had finally seen reason. I reached into my shirt drawer and pulled out a business card I'd saved for years. Detective Agnes Snyder, Financial Crimes Division. We'd met at a community safety meeting 5 years ago, back when Margaret was still alive. I folded the card carefully and slipped it into my shirt pocket. Francis wanted to play games with forged documents and legal manipulation. Time to change the rules. Thank you, son, for underestimating your old father. This was going to be interesting. Car doors slammed outside my window, the same sound that had started this nightmare, but now I was ready. I took a slow breath, adjusted my posture to seem frailer, and shuffled to the front door. The performance of my life was about to begin. Francis? I opened the door with a confused smile, blinking as if the afternoon light hurt my eyes. What brings you here? Are we having dinner? Francis exchanged a quick glance with Ethel. Dad, we talked about this. We're here to visit, remember? To say goodbye to the house. Of course, of course. I stepped aside, moving more slowly than usual. Come in, all of you. Clara rushed forward but stopped short when I looked at her blankly. Hello there, little girl. Do I know you? Her face crumpled. Grandpa, it's me, Clara, your granddaughter. I studied her face with apparent confusion, letting real pain show through. Clara? Yes, Clara. You look so much like someone I used to know. Stanley tugged on my sleeve. Grandpa, remember when you taught me to use tools in the garage? Tools? I looked genuinely puzzled. What tools? Who moved my tools? Ethel touched my arm with practiced sympathy. Alfred, you're just having a difficult day. Why don't we sit down? In the living room, I settled into Margaret's old chair instead of my usual spot. Francis noticed immediately, making another mental note. I picked up my coffee mug from this morning, stared at it blankly. What's this for again? It's for coffee, Dad. Francis's voice carried that careful patience people use with children. You were drinking coffee earlier. Oh, coffee. Yes, I like coffee. I set the mug down wrong, letting it clatter against the table. Clara tried again, pulling out a drawing from her backpack. Grandpa, I made this for you at school. It's our house, see? I held the paper close to my face, squinting. Whose house is this, sweetheart? Our house. Your house. Tears threatened in her voice. My house? I looked around the living room as if seeing it for the first time. This is a nice house. Do I live here? Francis sat forward, speaking clearly. Dad, this was your house, but you're moving to a nice apartment soon, somewhere smaller, easier to manage. Moving? Real anxiety crept into my voice. But where will I keep my things, my books? We'll take care of everything, Dad. Ethel's voice dripped false comfort. You don't need to worry about anything. I stood abruptly, then sat back down, as if forgetting why I'd gotten up. Francis, where's that boy of yours, the one who fixes things? Silence fell over the room. Francis cleared his throat carefully. Dad, that was Marvin. He died 5 years ago. This is Stanley, remember? Died? I looked genuinely shocked. When? Why didn't anyone tell me? Clara burst into tears. Stanley stared at me with growing fear. I reached for Clara instinctively, then stopped, confused about why she was crying. Did I say something wrong? Francis and Ethel whispered near the kitchen doorway. I caught fragments. Exactly like the doctors said, and good thing we're taking action now. For 4 hours I maintained the performance, forgetting names, asking the same questions twice, staring blankly at family photos on the mantelpiece. Each confused look broke my grandchildren's hearts a little more, but I couldn't stop now. Whose pictures are these? I asked about photos I'd looked at every day for 30 years. They're family pictures, Grandpa. Stanley's voice was small, scared. Family, yes, family is important. I nodded seriously. Do I have family? When they finally prepared to leave, Clara hugged me desperately. I love you, Grandpa. Please remember me." "Remember you?" I patted her head gently. "Of course I'll remember you, little girl. You're very sweet." She sobbed harder. Stanley clung to Francis's leg, afraid to approach the grandfather who no longer knew him. From my living room window, I watched them drive away. Clara's face pressed against the back window, still hoping I might suddenly remember and wave. I kept my confused expression until their car disappeared around the corner. Only then did I allow my face to sharpen into focus. 3 days until the lawyer's office. Time to prepare for the next act. Francis drove me downtown Tuesday morning, chattering nervously about simple paperwork, while I stared out the passenger window with apparent confusion. In reality, I was memorizing the route to Lloyd Carroll's office, studying the building's security, planning for what came next. "Just sign where Mr. Carroll shows you, Dad. I'll handle everything else." The elevator ride to the 32nd floor seemed to overwhelm me. I gripped the handrail, blinking rapidly at the ascending numbers. "How high are we going, Francis?" "Not much higher, Dad. Almost there." Lloyd Carroll's office screamed expensive efficiency. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked downtown Chicago. Diplomas covered one wall, and his massive desk held neat stacks of legal documents. He rose to greet us, extending a manicured hand. "Mr. Watkins, please have a seat. This should be straightforward." I looked around the office in apparent bewilderment. "I'm sorry. Who are you again? Francis said something about papers?" "I'm your son's attorney. We're just transferring your house to Francis for easier management." "Oh." I nodded slowly, as if processing complex information. "These papers, there are so many. What do they say?" Lloyd spread documents across his desk with practiced efficiency. Property transfer forms, deed changes, financial authorizations. I let my eyes wander apparently aimlessly, while secretly reading every word. "Don't worry, Mr. Watkins. Your son has reviewed everything thoroughly." "Francis reads well. He was always smart in school." I smiled proudly, then looked confused again. "Which school was that?" Francis squeezed my shoulder. "Northwestern, Dad. We've talked about this." "Northwestern. Yes, that's a good school." I picked up a pen, then set it down. "What am I supposed to do?" "Just sign where I show you." Lloyd pointed to signature lines. "Right here, Mr. Watkins." I held the pen awkwardly, squinting at the documents. "How long will this take? I get tired easily now." "Once you sign, the transfer is immediate. Very efficient process." "Immediate?" I looked up with genuine concern. "What about the other papers Francis mentioned?" Francis shot Lloyd a warning look, but Lloyd continued smoothly. "The guardianship petition will be filed next week, after the property transfer. Perfect timing, everything coordinated properly." I nodded as if barely understanding, while mentally filing away every detail. Guardianship petition. Next week. Coordinated timing. Francis wasn't just stealing my house. A's D, he was orchestrating my legal enslavement. "Mr. Watkins, if you could sign here, here, and here." Lloyd's finger moved across multiple pages. I signed slowly, laboriously, as if the simple act of writing my name required enormous concentration. With each signature, I was apparently signing away my life's work. In reality, I was gathering evidence. "There's a notary fee of $50, Lloyd mentioned casually. Francis pulled out his wallet immediately. "I'll handle that, Dad." "You're such a good son, Francis, taking care of your old father like this." The irony was lost on everyone except me. After 30 minutes of document signing, Lloyd gathered the papers with satisfaction. "Congratulations, Mr. Watkins. Your son now owns the property outright. You retain only a life estate, which means you can live there until other arrangements become necessary." "Other arrangements?" I looked genuinely worried. "Don't concern yourself with that, Dad." Francis helped me to my feet. "Everything's taken care of." As we prepared to leave, I accidentally dropped my pen. Bending to retrieve it, I took one last look at Lloyd's nameplate, memorizing his full name and office address. Evidence for later. In the elevator, Francis was practically glowing. "That went perfectly, Dad. See how simple it was?" "Simple." I nodded absently. "Yes, simple is good." But nothing about this was simple. Francis had just legally stolen my house using forged medical documents, and he thought he'd gotten away with it. The drive home gave me time to think. 2 signatures on paper, and 37 years of home ownership had vanished. But paper trails worked both ways. Every document Francis had filed would become evidence against him. Soon, very soon, Francis would discover that his confused old father was much sharper than anyone suspected. Thursday morning arrived with Francis at my door by 8 a.m., armed with moving boxes and the enthusiasm of someone claiming his prize. Halloween decorations still hung in neighbors' windows, but my house felt more like a tomb being excavated. "Morning, Dad. Ready to start packing?" I opened the door slowly, blinking in confusion. "Packing? Are we going somewhere? Dad, remember? You're moving to the apartment next week. We talked about this." "Oh yes, the apartment." I shuffled toward the kitchen. "Will you visit me there?" Francis followed, already surveying rooms with proprietary interest. "Of course I'll visit, but first, let's get you packed properly." For the next 6 hours, I performed my greatest acting challenge yet, moving through my own house like a confused stranger, while Francis systematically claimed everything valuable. "Dad, you don't need all these old books. They're too heavy for moving." I picked up a volume of engineering textbooks, staring at it blankly. "Books? What are these for?" "Just old technical stuff. We'll get you new books, easier ones to read." He tossed my professional library into a donate pile while I watched with apparent incomprehension. Each discarded book represented years of expertise he was literally throwing away. "Francis, where did you put that jewelry box? Mom's jewelry should be safe." "Jewelry?" I looked genuinely puzzled. "I don't remember any jewelry. Did I have jewelry?" "Don't worry, I'll find it. You just focus on your clothes." While Francis hunted through my bedroom, I secretly documented his behavior. He wasn't helping me pack D, he was looting my house with the efficiency of a professional thief. At noon, Francis left for lunch. The moment his car disappeared, I moved with purpose. From my kitchen, I dialed a number I'd memorized days ago. "Chicago Police, Fraud Division." I disguised my voice, making it higher and more nervous. "I want to report medical document fraud. Someone is using a fake dementia diagnosis to steal property. Can you provide details about the alleged fraud?" Check the medical certificates filed for Alfred Watkins on Maple Street. The signatures are forged. They're using fake documents to steal his house through guardianship fraud. When did this alleged fraud occur? This week, they just transferred the property illegally. The victim doesn't actually have dementia. Someone fabricated the medical reports. I provided enough specific details to trigger an investigation, then hung up before they could trace the call. Francis returned an hour later, more aggressive about the timeline. "Dad, we need to finish today. Everything has to be ready for the move." "Move?" I looked around my living room, as if seeing it for the first time. "But this is my house, isn't it?" "Dad, remember? You gave it to us, for the grandchildren." Friday morning brought the final phase. Francis arrived early, practically vibrating with ownership energy. "Today's the day, Dad. Last chance to pack anything special." I moved even more slowly, asking the same questions repeatedly. "Why are we moving my things? I don't understand." "Dad, we've been through this. The apartment will be better for you." At 2 p.m., I heard the sound I'd been waiting for. Car doors slamming outside, but not Francis's Honda. Through my living room window, I saw 2 police cars parking in my driveway. Francis was in the garage, sorting through tools he planned to keep. He hadn't noticed the police yet. I allowed myself one small, genuine smile before resuming my confused expression. The anonymous tip had worked. Justice was walking up my front sidewalk. Time for Francis to learn that his confused old father had been playing a game all along and winning. Car doors slammed outside my house. The same sound that had triggered this nightmare 2 weeks ago, but now I looked through my living room window and saw something beautiful. 2 Chicago Police Department vehicles parked in my driveway. Francis was in the garage, sorting through my tools with the casual ownership of someone who'd already forgotten they belonged to me. He didn't hear the official footsteps approaching my front door. I shuffled to answer the knock, maintaining my confused expression even though my heart was racing with anticipation. "Mr. Alfred Watkins?" A tall woman in a dark suit held up a badge. "I'm Detective Agnes Snyder, Chicago PD. We have a warrant to search these premises." "Search?" I blinked slowly, as if processing the words took effort. "What are you looking for? Did I lose something?" "We're investigating alleged medical document fraud related to a guardianship petition." Francis appeared from the garage, his face shifting from confusion to alarm as he spotted the police cars. "What's going on here? Officers, my father has dementia. He can't help you with anything." Detective Snyder studied Francis with professional interest. "Mr. Francis Watkins, I presume? We have evidence suggesting falsified medical evaluations concerning your father's mental capacity." "Medical fraud?" Francis's voice pitched higher. "This is some kind of mistake. I was trying to help my father." The detective handed Francis the search warrant. "Sir, we have reports that documents claiming Mr. Alfred Watkins has dementia may have been fabricated." I watched Francis read the warrant, his face draining of color, his confident homeowner demeanor cracked like ice under pressure. "This is ridiculous. The doctors confirmed his condition." "Which doctors specifically, Mr. Watkins?" Francis opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time in weeks, he had no ready answer. 3 officers began methodically searching my house, while Detective Snyder continued questioning. I maintained my bewildered act, asking innocent questions while internally celebrating each piece of evidence they discovered. "Why are these people here, Francis? I don't understand what's happening." "Dad, just sit down and let me handle this." But Francis wasn't handling anything anymore. The officers found his laptop in my study, the one he'd been using to help organize my affairs. 20 minutes later, one officer called Detective Snyder over. "We found the medical certificates. The signatures don't match our database of licensed physicians." Detective Snyder examined the documents, then looked at Francis with the expression of someone solving a puzzle. "Mr. Francis Watkins, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." "Wait," Francis's voice cracked. "You don't understand. I was trying to help my father. He seemed so confused." As handcuffs clicked around Francis's wrists, I allowed myself one moment of genuine confusion. "Francis, where are they taking you?" "Dad, I'm sorry. I'll fix this. I'll make everything right." Detective Snyder approached me gently. "Mr. Watkins, would you be willing to come to the station to answer some questions? We need to understand your perspective on recent events." "Questions?" I maintained my worried tone. "But I don't remember things very well anymore." "That's what we'd like to discuss, sir." As they helped me into the police car, I caught my reflection in the window. Soon, very soon, I could stop pretending to be someone I wasn't. Francis was about to learn that his confused old father had orchestrated this entire investigation. Justice had finally arrived at my door. The interview room at Chicago PD was sterile and official, nothing like the warm familiarity of my house. Detective Snyder set a cup of coffee in front of me and opened a thick file folder. "Mr. Watkins, can you tell me about your medical condition?" I took a careful sip of coffee, then looked directly into her eyes with complete clarity. "Detective, I need to tell you something. I don't have dementia." She paused, pen hovering over her notepad. "I'm sorry. What did you say?" I've been acting confused to see how far my son would go with his plan. I set the coffee cup down with steady hands. "Apparently, very far." Detective Snyder leaned back in her chair, studying my face. "Are you saying you've been pretending to have memory problems?" "I discovered my son was planning to have me declared incompetent using fake medical documents. My lawyer told me about the guardianship petition last week." "Your lawyer?" "Bernard Olson. He received a call from Francis's attorney about medical evaluations I'd never had." I pulled out my phone and showed her Bernard's contact information. "Check with him. I've been mentally sharp this entire time." Detective Snyder made notes rapidly. "How did you learn about the alleged fraud?" "Bernard called me Monday morning. When Francis gave me his ultimatum, transfer my house or lose my grandchildren, I thought it was just manipulation. I didn't know about the medical fraud until Bernard explained the guardianship petition." "So you decided to investigate?" "I decided to give Francis enough rope to hang himself." I met her gaze steadily. "I'm a retired engineer, detective. I know how to solve problems systematically." She studied me for a long moment. "Mr. Watkins, you realize you could have called us immediately? With what proof? Francis hadn't filed anything yet. I needed him to commit the fraud completely before I could expose it. And the anonymous tip we received yesterday?" I smiled slightly. "Sometimes concerned citizens notice elder abuse in their neighborhoods." An hour later, they brought Francis into a conference room. His face was puffy from crying, his confident demeanor completely shattered. When he saw me sitting upright, speaking clearly, his expression shifted to pure shock. "Dad, you seem different." "I'm myself again, Francis. The question is, who are you?" "I don't understand. The doctor said you had dementia." "Which doctors, Francis? The ones whose signatures you faked?" Francis slumped in his chair. "You've been pretending this whole time?" "I've been watching my son steal my life while using my grandchildren as weapons." My voice remained calm, but the words hit him like physical blows. "I wanted to see how far you'd go." "Dad, please. I thought you were really sick. I was trying to protect you." "Protect me? By forging medical documents and stealing my house?" Francis broke down completely. "I can fix this. I'll give everything back. Please don't press charges." I looked at my son, really looked at him. 42 years old, crying like a child caught stealing cookies. "Francis, I loved you enough to let you choose. You chose poorly. Dad, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. You made dozens of calculated decisions. Forging documents isn't a mistake. It's a crime." Detective Snyder placed documents in front of Francis. "Mr. Watkins, these are the falsified medical certificates found on your computer. We also have email communications discussing the guardianship strategy." Francis stared at the evidence of his own crimes. "I never meant for it to go this far." "How far did you mean it to go?" I asked quietly. He had no answer. 3 hours later, Francis had signed a full confession. The guardianship petition was withdrawn. The property transfer was declared fraudulent. My house was legally mine again. As we prepared to leave, Francis looked at me with desperate hope. "Dad, can you ever forgive me?" I considered his question carefully. "Francis, trust isn't given, it's earned. You'll need to prove yourself over time." "I'll do anything." "Start by being honest with Clara and Stanley about what happened. They deserve to know the truth." For the first time in weeks, I walked out of a building as myself, not confused, not helpless, but a man who'd fought for his dignity and won. Saturday morning found me in Bernard's office for the first time in 2 weeks, without pretending confusion. The autumn sunlight streamed through familiar windows as we prepared to officially restore what Francis had tried to steal. "Alfred, all documents signed under fraudulent circumstances are void." Bernard spread the paperwork across his conference table. "Your house is legally yours again." "Thank you, Bernard. Now let's create a proper trust for Clara and Stanley. The trust will protect their inheritance while ensuring Francis can't access it without court approval." As we worked through the legal restoration, the conference room door opened. Francis entered with his public defender, looking older than his 42 years. Behind them came a social worker with Clara and Stanley. The children ran to me immediately, their faces lighting up with relief. "Grandpa, you seem so much better today." "I'm feeling like myself again, sweetheart." I hugged Clara close, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Grandpa was just solving a grown-up problem." "Does this mean you're not sick anymore?" Stanley's small hand found mine. "I was never sick, buddy. Sometimes adults have to solve complicated puzzles, and it takes time to find all the pieces." Francis watched our reunion with a mixture of longing and shame. "Dad, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I'll accept whatever consequences come." "Francis, consequences teach lessons. That's how we grow. I'll spend my life making this right, if you'll let me." Bernard cleared his throat. "The court has accepted your plea agreement, Francis. 18 months probation, 500 hours community service, and restitution for legal fees." "And the children?" Francis asked quietly. I looked at my son carefully. "Francis, trust isn't something I can just give back to you. You'll need to earn it through your actions, not your words." "I understand." "Start by explaining to Clara and Stanley what happened. They're old enough to understand that adults sometimes make bad choices." Francis knelt down to his children's level. "Kids, I made some very bad decisions about Grandpa's house. I hurt people I love, and now I have to make it right." Clara looked confused. "But why would you hurt Grandpa?" "Because I was being selfish and dishonest. Grandpa had to be very clever to stop me from making an even bigger mistake." Stanley studied his father's face. "Are you in trouble?" "Yes, buddy, I am. But trouble can help people learn to be better." Bernard finalized the trust documents while I established clear boundaries with Francis, supervised visits with the children, no financial access to their inheritance. monthly family meetings to rebuild trust slowly. Alfred, Bernard said, the trust ensures Clara and Stanley's education and welfare are protected regardless of future circumstances. I signed the final documents with my own name, in my own handwriting, with my own clear mind. No one guided my hand or made decisions for me. As we prepared to leave, I took my grandchildren's hands. Want to see what rooms you can play in when you visit Grandpa's house? It's still your house? Clara asked. It always was, sweetheart. Sometimes people forget that, but the truth has a way of coming back. Francis walked behind us, carrying the weight of his choices, but also the possibility of redemption. It would take time to rebuild what he'd broken. Trust earned slowly was trust that lasted. At my front door, I turned to him one final time. Francis, your brother Marvin used to say that a man's character isn't measured by his mistakes, but by how he handles them afterward. I won't let you down again, Dad. Prove it through your actions, not your promises. Inside my house, Clara and Stanley ran through rooms that felt warm and alive again. Their laughter echoed off walls that had witnessed betrayal and justice, manipulation and truth. I stood in my living room, looking at family photos on the mantelpiece. Marvin's graduation picture still smiled back at me. Francis's wedding photo remained, smaller but not removed. Because families heal through truth, not through forgetting. Sometimes justice comes through courts and consequences. Sometimes it comes through a grandfather's love, carefully applied. Today, it came through both. My house was mine again. My mind was my own. My grandchildren's future was secure. Francis would have to earn his way back into the family photo, one honest choice at a time. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.